Welcome back to our first In the Zone in the fall semester. Alongside Lucas Miller and Brad Wood, I am your host, Dylan Shields. College football is underway, the MLB continues to heat up, and of course, the NFL season is just around the corner. We've got a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. In the Zone starts now. Starting off with one of the most anticipated games of college football this weekend, the Colorado and TCU matchup really lived up to the hype. Deion Sanders made his coaching debut as Colorado's head coach. His son broke the school's single-game passing record, and Travis Hunter made playing both sides of the ball look easy. As for TCU, they looked about as feisty as they did towards the end of the season last year, even with Max Dutton under center. Brad, what can we make of this game? What are your expectations for Colorado this year?
You know, as Sanders would say, do you believe in us now? Of course. You know, let's just say first thing, I am so glad college football is back because this is, if I were to say, hey, if there's any football game to watch this week, it's this one because you have TCU, we're in the national championship, and it kind of feels like they're still in that way because they kind of fumbled a bag against, Colorado. I mean, Colorado were, the whole game was just a great back and forth, but TCU kind of really fumbled a bag. Colorado's O-line is really not that good. It's kind of a weak point, but they weren't really attacking it. So, you have Colorado's QB kind of running around circles around. It was good back and forth action, and, I really enjoy it. I think Sanders could really turn around with Oklahoma. Now, do I expect them to do really, really well? No. But I think they'll be sub 500. Okay, it's better than 1-11 compared to last year. Anything is better for Colorado. They'll look up and up, but TCU, I mean, if you can't beat Colorado, they may make it back to the national championship. I doubt it. But Lucas, what do you think?
I think TCU, they had an incredible run last year, of course. They, did something that we haven't seen them do in quite a long time. And I've kind of figured there's going to be a little bit of a drop-off this year. Now, yes, they lost one game, but you have to give props to Deion Sanders and everything he's been able to do there so far. So the outlook for TCU the rest of the year now is, can you finish out, winning every game where you drop 2 or 3 more? Because they could make it back to the Big 12 championship. I think the playoff was not really an expectation this year, but they ran into a good team in their opening game. And as for Colorado, they did a lot more than anyone thought they would in their first weekend, with Deion Sanders. So that is big for them. I think it's big for TCU because you kind of get your feet under yourself a little bit here and you can get some momentum for the rest of the season.
Us also, but I think Colorado could go on the roll. I think one thing I noticed with the game is the skilled players on Colorado was just a lot faster. Like, they have more speed, they can really cover more. Like, I was kind of worried with TCU secondary. They were leaving open space. Kind of, Colorado, they saw that and really took advantage of that, and it was just a really fun game to watch. I mean, it's kind of hard to go into TCU and really come out with a win. So
I think Deion's completely changed the culture with this new roster, this 50, I believe about 50 new people change, and I believe he's inspired this new regime of players and his locker room to get his team back on track. Let's transition into Penn State. They made their debut against West Virginia University on Saturday, making drive after drive look easy. Drew Aller was the star of the show as the 6'5" quarterback threw for 325 yards and 3 touchdowns. What do you think of this game, Lucas? Is Penn State legit this year?
I really don't want to answer that because I'm a huge Penn State fan. I've lived through so much that has happened the past couple years. I'm going to have to suffer through James Franklin more and more and more. But, yeah, I think they look as good right now, and my expectations for them are as high right now as they were when Barkley and McSorley were there because it kind of has that similar vibe. You have Aller, he's a new quarterback coming in. He's obviously, hopefully going to be a step up from Clifford. And then, the running back tandem of Singleton and Allen is kind of just building right off of that. They have a very good defense. They have a very good defensive front. I think the biggest question mark for Penn State after the West Virginia game going into the rest of the season is their receiving core. They do have Keandre Lambert-Smith returning, and they do have a new transfer, Dante Cephas. But after that, you really kind of wonder who else is going to step up. What does the depth look like on their offense as far as skill positions go?
Brad, what's your take? How legit do you think they are?
I think Aller is going to be a great quarterback. Of course, he's a little bit uncertain. He didn't really have that instinct with some plays, but because again, he's a freshman. He's getting used to everything right now. But I think my main concern with Penn State is that D-line. You got to stop the run game. I remember, I think it was last year against Michigan, 400 rushing yards. You can't allow that. So what I'm looking for Penn State, if they can win against a great, meaningful opponent, because that's Penn State. They are a good team, but against the big games, they fumble the bag. So I don't want to live up the hype. I don't want to be disappointed.
Defense had some shaky moments, but I believe Auer is the best quarterback of the past few, McSorley and Clifford. So as a Pitt fan, I hate to say it, but I do think they're legit. So in a slightly less anticipated game, Clemson went up to North Carolina to face Duke in a Monday night matchup that had many yawning at the thought of. But while Clemson were heavy favorites heading into the game, the underestimated, unranked Duke squad went out there and proved their worth with a 28-7 win after an exciting upset to end this weekend. What are your thoughts on this game, Brad?
Well, I think Duke is really going well with the program. I think they're taking steps. Like last season, they had one of the best seasons they had in quite a while. And Duke was about one of the best running backs and wide receivers. But yet again, they pulled off. And they also shut down Clemson. I feel like Clemson, that new quarterback, very shaky, very uncertain. He wasn't really transitioned in. He just looked like a scared freshman going out there and intimidated by Duke. So if you have ambitions to do well this season and we have that as your QB, how far can Clemson go? But I think we got to give kudos to Duke. Duke
Absolutely.
really had a new head coach, really got a good formula in, and all the new players, I think it's fit right into the system. But Lucas, what do you think about Duke?
I like where Duke's at a lot. I don't see this upset as being huge. I wasn't completely shocked by it. I didn't think it would be 28-7, but I am not very high on Clemson right now. Their quarterback situation last year, Klubnik, he played a couple games. I thought he's going to fit right into the Trevor Lawrence, kind of mold at Clemson, and he's just going to go right into everything that all the quarterbacks usually succeed at Clemson with. But he doesn't look like that at all, and I don't think that he should have had that much trouble in an environment like Duke. I mean, he's going to have much tougher opponents this season than the Blue Devils, but give props to Duke. I mean, they're up in the top 25 right now. I think they can kind of keep building off of that, and if they get some favorable games, we could see them up in the top 15, maybe even having a better season than last year. They went to the Military Bowl last year. I had the privilege of seeing that game in person, and they looked very good going up against, out-of-conference opponents. So if they keep doing what they did against Clemson, I don't really know who's going to stop them in terms of what bowl game they can be in. I see them maybe, a ceiling would be maybe 2 or 3 losses, but, it could all collapse. This could just be a fluke with Clemson,
Or could Clemson come back, That's, we don't really know. This is college football. Any given Saturday,
It's a shame Duke's quarterback couldn't get an extension on his homework. That professor was ruthless. Just didn't get many points. But I did hear his own lineman did the homework ahead of time. So it's kind of your fault. Should have done it ahead of time. But, oh well, at least you won against Clemson. So this past week has been very busy for Marauder Athletics. We send it to Nicole Dalton for the latest in Ville sports. Over to you, Nicole.
Thanks, Dylan. Welcome back, Marauders. Millersville Athletics has had a strong start to the semester, so let's get into it. Football started off their season with an exceptional 33-7 victory over St. Anselm. Coach J.C. Morgan spoke on the team's resilience, which was showcased in this game. Quote, "We talk about fighting. Those are the things we practice and emphasize. From Jaquan's run with everyone joining in that fight to Connor's play, those are examples of that. That's cool to see as a coach, and it's great to see them buying into what we are talking about." End quote. They will be traveling to play Gannon University this weekend. This past weekend in women's volleyball, the Marauders fell in their first doubleheader against the Wilmington Wildcats and Rollins University, with 3-1 and 3-0 respectfully in the Marauder clash, but had success against Mercyhurst and Roberts Wesleyan, winning 3-2 and 3-1. Men's soccer has started their season with a 3-2 win over the Ashland Eagles. Redshirt senior Bob Hennessy led 2 goals, as well as senior Mike Kreider with a goal in the second half. Field hockey also had success against St. Anselm, beating them 3-1. Koyaya Nagaduka had a dominating performance, leading the team offensively and getting her second hat trick of her career. With less than a minute remaining in the first half, the Marauders and Hawks were tied, but with a strong start in the third quarter, the Marauders would keep the lead the rest of the game to lead them to victory in their season opener. Best of luck to all the athletes competing as fall sports get underway. Now, let's head back to the desk for some NFL preview. Dylan?
Thanks, Nicole. The NFL season is just around the corner, and it could not have come any sooner. The regular season opener is a powerful offensive matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions. The popular belief is that while the Lions can put up a good fight against any team, the Chiefs would ultimately take their first win this season in this matchup. That is, until Travis Kelce injured his knee practice and is now questionable to play against Detroit. Without their best offensive weapon, Lucas, does Kansas City still stand a chance against the Lions?
Yeah, I don't really see why they wouldn't. I mean, their backup tight end is not like a random player. He's been there for a couple years now, I think 2 or 3 seasons. So, I mean, Andy Reid will find ways to fit anybody into any personnel, I think, any given week. So, as long as they have some productivity still from their other weapons with Kadarius Toney, I think with Valdez-Scantling, he's still correct, Valdez-Scantling. I think they'll be perfectly fine. I mean, Kelce, depending how long he's out, as long as they can, fit Gray into the offense in any way possible, I don't really see them having any trouble with the Lions or anyone else moving forward.
Brad, what do you think? They have a chance?
I feel like Detroit kind of pulled a little above their weight last season, so I'm not really worried if Kansas City can handle it. I'll be shocked if I can expect a close game, but if Kansas City really lose to Detroit, I'll be something right there. But I don't know. Again, like Andy Reid can kind of fit anyone. They also have great depth all around, so like they're not like the Cowboys that rely on high-end talent. I think Kansas would just be fine, but I think it'll still be a good matchup either way.
As long as 15's still in the field, I think you can throw in a backup high school team and the Chiefs will still do good.
Yeah.
But I do think the Lions, Dan Campbell, have built a great culture. I think they drafted well. I love Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon St. Brown. I think Jared Goff is extremely underrated. I think this game's going to be closer than people think. I think it's going to be high scoring. And I actually think, I've said this since the schedule came out, I think the Lions can pull it off. I really do. I think they're a playoff caliber team, and I think they could pull it in the clutch here. We saw it with them ending Rodgers' career in Green Bay. But we'll see tomorrow night.
I mean, I think Kansas City will be fine, but I think one of the things for the Lions, they have a couple of defensive players that are banged up. So, going into the game, even though Kelce's out, they still have guys that are out. So it's not like they're going full strength defensively against, the Chiefs without Kelce. They're going like backups against them, so.
I think Campbell will be, he's, I think, one of the best head coaches. He can really bring a lot out of their players. And I think because their division's a little weak, they might be sneaky favorites to win it all. So, but, we'll see.
Can't wait for the game. So, what was possibly the biggest offseason move in the NFL will make its debut on Monday Night Football Week 1. Lifetime Green Bay Packer Aaron Rodgers is suiting up with the New York Jets and taking on a very talented Buffalo Bills squad. The Josh Allen-Aaron Rodgers rivalry is bound to be exciting. But does Aaron Rodgers really have that much left in the tank, Brad, at all?
I'm being honest, no, because I'm looking at Aaron Rodgers last season. He could barely throw 15 yards. He feels a bit lost right now. I just don't get the move by the Jets of getting an aging quarterback. Unless you're going to draft this year and kind of transition in, I think it kind of hinders a rebuild a little bit. It's just some of the questionable moves. I mean, I think the Jets will still be a decent team, definitely over 500, but against the Bills, I mean, the Jets have one of the best defense. I think the top 3 in least runs scored against. So I think it'll be a good offensive matchup. But when Aaron Rodgers and that offense really pull against the Bills with so many weapons, Josh Allen can find it anywhere, run around as well, So I think it's the Bills' games to lose, but again, could be surprised. But Lucas, what do you think?
I'm going to be honest. I think the only thing that you said that I agree with is that the Bills have a good defense because, I think the Jets bringing in Rodgers is great because he's going to help their backup, Zach Wilson, improve. I mean, if you watch the preseason games in the past month, Hard Knocks, whatever. I think Rodgers has taught Wilson a lot. So I'm not necessarily thinking that they brought Rodgers in to have like a great year with him. I think they brought him in saying, you know what, he can develop all of our young guys on this roster because they have other veterans on the team, such as Randall Cobb. I mean, he's not, a superstar, but Jarett Wilson, going into his second year, is going to be a great weapon for Aaron Rodgers. The defense has a lot of young players like Sauce Gardner. They can definitely improve. There's definitely nowhere to go but up for the Jets defense. So having Rodgers there, I don't know that their expectations are, look, we're going to bring in Rodgers, we're going to bring in Cobb, Lazard, who be it, and go win the Super Bowl. I think their expectations are we can definitely take our young roster and completely build off of that because we have a guy like Rodgers in here who can, I guess they have Hackett as well, correct? The offensive coordinator. So they have guys like Hackett, they have guys like Aaron Rodgers. We can take all of our young core and just completely let them learn off of guys like Rodgers and Hackett, just build it going forward. So, yes, the Bills' defense is great. Yes, Rodgers is old, but I think they're kind of looking at this like what's in it for the future and not just this season.
I believe it's a little bit of both. I believe they are trying to compete for a Super Bowl, but at the same time, they want to mentor Zach Wilson. I don't think the Jets fans could have taken another year with him after how he did last year. But the matchup's very intriguing. I can't wait to see how Rodgers is going to do. Tested right away, Von Miller is not playing, but it should be a great Monday Night Football matchup. The MLB playoffs are coming up soon, sooner than we know, actually. And we have some key terms to discuss and teams to discuss heading into next month right after the short break. Welcome back. We are now joined by Aaron Chung, and we are talking baseball. When thinking about the playoffs next month, the first team that comes to mind is the Atlanta Braves. They not only have the best record in the MLB, their roster is filled with insane talent from top to bottom. That being said, Brad, are the Braves your favorites going forward? Or do you see another team competing with them?
In the NL, I only see two teams really competing. It's the Braves, of course, because they have talent top to bottom. Even the bottom of the lineup, they're close to 300 hitters. And you have the Dodgers. Now, the Dodgers, you have Mookie Betts, you have Freddie Freeman. They're killing it. Now, I am concerned a little bit with the starting rotation, the bullpen, dealing with some injuries, a little underperformance, and some scandals that we're not going to get into in this program. But I think it's really those two. I think it's the AL that a lot can happen. But, I think the Braves can definitely go on. The Padres, a little disappointing year. The Mets are the Mets. So you really only have, the Braves and the Dodgers really being a strong force in the NL. But that's just my opinion. But, Aaron, what do you think?
Here's the thing. I think the Braves were in a very similar situation last year where they weren't as strong as they are this year, granted, but they were still very strong, and they were going into that Phillies series. I remember getting there and thinking, there's no chance. And then next thing you know, they're out in 4 games in a very convincing fashion by the Phillies. So I think now this year, I think it's different for them because they are so much better than last year's team somehow. And I think there's a very reasonable chance that they're going to be back in the World Series. But I think with baseball in the playoffs, I think it just kind of proves this idea that once you get in, anything can happen. I mean, the Phillies were a great example of that last year, and we've seen teams like that in the past. We saw the 2019 Nationals, the 2021 Braves, in fact. They were an 88-win team, barely kind of scooted into the wild card.
No Acuna that year.
Yeah, no Acuna that year, and they just took off all the way to winning the World Series. So I think it's a world where anything can happen here.
And that's all it is in the playoffs. But, while Acuna on the Braves, a lot can happen. He's been killing it. It's great to see him back from injury because last year wasn't really around too much.
We'll see how they do come October. Now, outside of Atlanta, and including some we've mentioned already, the Orioles, Dodgers, Rays, and Mariners have all held their keep with the playoffs around the corner. Of all these teams, or maybe even ones not mentioned, who are you most confident in going forward, Aaron?
I think Orioles, Braves, you mentioned them. Of course, you got to be pretty confident in them. I think the Rays are a team that's interesting to watch because I feel like with the way the Orioles took off, they kind of just started to fall back into the fold of every other team there. But they're still only 3.5 games behind the Orioles. They were 17-8 in August. I think in spite of everything that they just went through in the last month, they lost Shane McClanahan to Tommy John surgery. There's the whole Wander Franco situation. It's a mess. But they've still got so many key contributors. I look at Arozarena, I look at Luke Raley, I look at Isaac Paredes. I remember they got him just before the 22 season for Austin Meadows, and everyone's kind of thinking, what are they doing? Well, in those 234 games he's played with the Rays, he's got 47 home runs, 131 RBIs.
Whew.
His 162-game pace, I believe, is 33 home runs. So I think they've been able to kind of find production. And, of course, you know how they are with pitching. So
Yeah.
But what I'm worried about the Rays is McClanahan going down with Tommy John. If they're in a wild card series, will they have the starting rotation to be strong enough to push for a wild card? That's why I don't know. I feel like with the O's, if they win the division, I think they could go far. But if they're in a wild card spot, since their starting rotation's not the strongest in the world, they have a really good bullpen though and great young players all around, I don't think they'll go out. So it's a very interesting situation. Starting pitching is key.
Yeah, there's definitely teams like the Phillies or Cubs that came out of nowhere as well that could obviously contribute and make a run, but we'll see in October. That'll do it for this episode of In the Zone. For Brad Wood, Lucas Miller, Aaron Chung, and the entire In the Zone crew, I'm Dylan Shields. Thanks for tuning in to our first episode, and we will see you next week right here on In the Zone.